And we're live. We are rocking and rolling.
Ooh.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea show or podcast. I'm not even sure what to call it. This is where we get together and we sit down and we talk about a book that Andrea's read. And we generally try to pick someone that is interesting or has done something really cool or, I don't know, whatever it is. And we talk about it and we see if there's anything that they've done in their life, in their story, that we might want to incorporate into our lives and into what we're trying to do here. So that's pretty much the skinny of it. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but we're here to have a good time too. And if you like any of the things that we do, please check out our website, odumandandrea.com. We have all of our past podcasts on there as well as some other stuff. And just a little bit of house cleaning here, just to mention. So this is going to be our last podcast for about a month. We're going to be back on September, I think it's the 5th. It is, yes. Right? Which is a Monday. So basically, as I just said, Andrea reads all these books and then we kind of talk about them, and we've been going on a pace of once a week. And it's basically like we've caught up. Like Andrea, she's read a whole bunch of books kind of advanced when we started this podcast, and now she needs a little bit more time to basically get caught up. Right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And also it's been hard too because we have had so many visitors this summer.
Yeah, we have some visitors coming.
Busy. So then it's harder for me to have time to read.
So just, so just a little bit of break. Don't worry, we're coming back. I promise. And yeah, that's pretty much all to say about that, right? Yeah. Nothing simple. So we'll miss you guys, but we'll be back. We'll be nothing simple, nothing complicated. What did I just say?
He said nothing simple.
Nothing complicated, then I guess is what I meant to say. Yeah. Or it's, anyway, it's something simple. Yeah. Anyway. So, there'll be other stuff going on too. I can promise you that. But anyways, so with that said, we are reading today Jewel. Is it actually Jewel, like the singer Jewel?
Yeah.
Boy, what's that song? What's that song that she sings?
She sings many songs.
Well, the song.
You Were Made for Me?
Yeah, that's probably that. You were made for me and I was made for you.
Yep.
No, for you. Whatever. Yeah. I can't sing. I'm terrible at it. All right. So Jewel, Never Broken. Songs are only half the story. Interesting. Okay. What does it say up here? Jewel is a truth teller. This book that lingers in your heart by Brene Brown. Brene Brown.
Brene Brown.
Interesting. All right. Let me post this up here. Hopefully that focuses. And yeah, Jewel, Never Broken. Take it away.
So what do you know about Jewel?
I know that she's a singer and she sings that song that was super popular. That's on like every rom-com movie ever made in the 90s.
Okay.
Like that's it.
That's it.
Wait, there's something else, isn't there?
Yeah. You don't know anything about her background?
No. Is she,
is
she Canadian?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Kind of close though.
Is she American?
She is, but anyway, but no, you don't know anything else. Okay, cool.
No.
This will be fun.
Is there anything that I should know? Well, I guess we'll find out.
I think when I tell you, you'll remember.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Never Broken. Did she break?
A couple times.
All right. Well, that was a great book. Great story. All right. Yeah.
So she's actually from Alaska.
Okay.
So
it's still American. It's so far away.
I don't.
Well, I guess.
I feel like it's Alaska. I mean, it's like you're bordering Canada. You're closer to Canada.
But you're not. You're not closer to being Canadian than you are American. Yeah. You're still full blown American.
Yeah. So her grandparents on both sides actually helped settle Alaska. So I think it was her dad's parents. They were giving away free land in Alaska
by the American government. This is after they purchased Alaska, because they purchased it from Russia, wasn't it?
I don't know.
They purchased it from someone, because I was like Canada. Like, why didn't we buy that? Because we bought all of Hudson's Bay for like ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
Like I mean. Not cheap back then, but it was like 7 million or something ridiculous like that. It's like, that's a lot of land to buy for $7 million.
Yeah. So what happened was apparently her dad's dad was like this big dreamer, and he kind of saw how things, like what things were happening in Europe at this time, because this was like 1940s. And so I think they were in Switzerland, like Germany or Switzerland, and definitely her grandmother was from Switzerland. And so they were kind of gonna have almost like a commune. They were organizing like a bunch of different people to come together. Each was gonna learn a different skill, and then they were gonna go all together and have this kind of like artists community. But everyone was learning a different skill because like you had to settle this like crazy wild Alaskan frontier.
Oh, so they were getting people when they were in Switzerland to come together and be like, hey guys, we're
all gonna go together, we're gonna settle this, and we're gonna have this kind of artists community.
All right. So they weren't even American, they were European.
Yeah, before like
Okay.
her grandparents.
Right.
So then apparently then no one else could, or no, her grandfather, I think, like volunteered to kind of come over first. And even his story of how he came over and tried to find like the land, and he was going over like crevasses and trying to get into Alaska. Like even that story apparently sounds pretty crazy. So we got there.
Because I should just back up. You said that they first to settle. They weren't there was so many people that were there in Alaska beforehand, because you're talking about the early 1900s.
I'm talking
right?
about like making a town,
right?
Like it
like
had never been like cleared or like.
Right. But there's still a lot of natives up there as well too, just like there's in Canada, right?
So like First Nations people, yeah.
Just want to make it sound like it's not like it's been Alaska in 1940 had no people.
No. Yeah. So they were gonna go over. Her grandfather comes over, and then her grandmother. No one else was gonna go, and so her grandmother ends up going. She's the only other person. She was engaged to this guy and then broke off the engagement just because she saw what was happening in Germany or in Europe at this time, because it was going to be World War II.
This is in the
so
was it in the 30s then or the 40s?
Yeah, it was the 40s.
Because World War II started in 39.
Yeah, so it was around that time. It was around.
But she's German then.
I think German or Swiss. It's definitely Switzerland. One of them is. But they saw kind of what was happening and were like,
"It's safe enough, right?" They weren't like, Jewish and be like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, no. They're actually Mormon. They're actually Mormon.
Is that better?
It's different.
No, I know. I'm just being silly.
So her grandmother comes over, and her grandfather was just like, "Oh, so what happened to your fiance?" And she's like, "Oh, I left him because I wanted to come in here because I believed in this idea so much." And he was like, "All right, you want to get married?" So they just got married. I
mean, I can think of no better reason how to get married than settle on an adventure.
Yeah. So, and then they settled in this little town called Homer. And so it's right, you'll have to look it up on a map, but it's kind of like it's on a peninsula of the land in Alaska that goes into the ocean. So, and it looks like it's about like 5 to 6 hours away from Anchorage.
Okay.
So really, it's a tiny town.
Right.
It's like a little fishing village.
Because it's funny, I'm trying to picture it on a map because I don't know. We'll post it up on the video if you're watching the video, because I'm like, oh, it's Alaska. It's somewhere, where it's touching the ocean. Yeah. I'm like, the whole state is touching the ocean. So you can
see that's where the red dot
is. Okay. So if you look at it's a big horseshoe at the top, it's it's right in there.
Yeah. So
it's got a little, almost looks like a mirror image, a little bit of Halifax and the Halifax Peninsula.
Yeah,
in terms
it is
like
kind of
sticking out there.
Yeah, it is kind of. So obviously, to be able to settle and come, not just like settle land that has never been settled before, but to settle land within Alaska, you have to be a pretty hardy person.
Yeah.
So that's basically what.
Because there's not a lot of farming either to be had.
Yeah. So they had to do everything themselves. And she talks a lot about like the women in her family and how like they were just like really hardy and very independent. And her grandmother, actually, I think they ended up having like 8 kids, and so she would be left at times like by herself to take care of these 8 kids in the freaking frontier town. Like it was like pretty crazy stuff.
It reminds me a little bit of that movie which we never finished, Terror on the Prairie.
Oh,
because she's just there. There's not much words happening, and then she's just kind of taking care of the house and the one baby.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But just like it's it's snowy and cold. But that's like Montana type area, so it's just like the Midwest, so it's nothing crazy like Alaska, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so her family actually still lives on that land to this day.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's still kind of like homestead. Then that's where she basically grew up, was on this homestead. No running water, no electricity, like none of that. That's how she grew up.
I like it already. Can I start asking if we're going to move to Alaska?
And so her family, her dad and a couple of her, and I think her brother, maybe one of her brothers and other cousins and stuff, they actually, Discovery Channel has a reality show on them called Alaska, The Last Frontier.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Alaska, the jewel of the North or something like that.
No.
Is it too much?
Yeah. So
they have a reality show with her, like her brothers and cousins and
I think
whatever?
so, and her dad. Yeah. So she has
at this homestead.
Yeah. So she has a.
It's not. So it's a TV show. I hate calling reality shows as if it's real because it's all staged,
But anyways,
they have a TV show.
Yeah, and it's so she has an older brother and a younger brother. So
she's one of 3.
Yep.
She's the middle.
Yeah, she's the middle one.
2 boys, 1 girl. Okay.
Yeah, you good?
Carry on. Continue, please.
So her dad's dad was very, very abusive, though.
No, the grandfather, the first one.
Yeah, like very abusive to
physically?
the point where, and psychologically, apparently psychologically it was really bad, to the point where her dad ended up going to Vietnam, and he found that easier to deal with than living with his dad.
Wow. And was he like a soldier? Like on the front lines kind of thing?
I don't know, but I mean, he went to Vietnam, so.
Well, I know, but some.
Yeah, I don't know. The one thing with her grandmother was her grandmother had wanted to be this opera singer, and music was always really important, so they were always singing. And she said like her family is like ridiculously talented musically, and so they would sing all the time. And so that kind of went on with her dad and her mom. And so her dad, they moved to Utah for a little bit, and he got his master's in social work, which you will find is ironic.
Jules' dad got a master's in social work,
which is ironic, and
because that's dealing with families with issues.
He worked with kids with issues, which is ironic, and you'll see why soon. But they lived in Anchorage, like when she was like the small kid growing up, and so her dad would work, but then they would also. Her mom and her dad would sing at like hotels and that sort of thing. They'd have contracts for kind of like the tourist season and sing to tourists. And so eventually Jewel began to yodel. And so yodeling was like their big thing. And so that's what she would do. And she loved it. She said she loved like kind of figuring out the puzzle of like harmonizing and like learning how to harmonize and the melody and just even vocal control. I think especially for yodeling, you would need that more vocal control.
Probably just for any kind of good singing. Yeah.
So then her parents fought a lot. And then when she was 8, they eventually got divorced. And her dad took her and her and her 2 brothers back to Homer because they were living in Anchorage. So took them back to Homer to live there.
With the grandparents.
Yeah, well, they didn't live there. They lived in like this like little barn type place.
Just on the same land. Because they probably had like,
tons of acres.
100 acres. Here you go. Yeah, you guys exactly. Work it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so she couldn't like understand at the beginning, like why am I not going with my mom? Like why are we with my dad? And apparently, she would learn later that her mom just said, I don't want to be a mom anymore, so you can just take the kids. And that was it. So he took them. So, which is ridiculous.
How old was the mom at the time?
I don't know.
And how old was she?
She was 8. Yeah.
And what year was this?
I'm not sure.
Because how old is she now?
So she's
about maybe 10 years older than us?
48. 48.
Not even?
Yeah. So it'd be in the 70s, I guess. 70s, early 80s, something like that.
When she was born?
No, when her mom left.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So she was 8. So but then her dad just starts drinking, and he starts beating them. He starts like yelling at them all the time. And it's just really tough. But then they start singing together. So Jewel kind of takes her mom's spot, and they go through and they go to all these different bars and places to sing.
You saying she sings with her dad?
Yeah.
Well, she has no choice. No. You're stuck in an abusive, and especially you're in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere you can go.
But she did really like it, and so
the singing, of course.
And so they would sing not just like, so they would sing like a lot of covers, but they would also sing like her dad's like original songs as well, I guess. And
would they do anything else other than just sing? Like, was there any instruments involved at all?
I'm not sure. She didn't really say. I don't know.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One interesting thing that she says is like she was really removed, obviously living up there so remote. She was completely removed from any type of pop culture. And so she never even heard the covers that they did. She never even heard the song before she sang it.
Right.
And so she said it was interesting because she didn't see like that cult of kind of personality attached to those songs or any like context behind the songs. She just had the pure, like she said, the pure power of the words and the stories that they conveyed, which I thought was really interesting.
And I think what is really interesting about that is that you can start developing your own way to critically think about things as to whether you actually like a song or not, as opposed to like, well, this is what everyone else is listening to. This is why it's good. It's like, well, I'm going to think about things for myself.
Yeah.
Something that's sorely missing, I think, in today's age, where people just,
yeah,
oh, this is popular, so yeah, I do like it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why there's pros and cons to the technology that we have, you know.
Of course.
Pros, we have access to like every song ever made.
Yeah.
Con is that then it's maybe harder to find things that we actually truly enjoy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and even like related to that, she says, I think having the silence in which to develop my own sound was priceless, because you're not being influenced by those other sounds like you're saying, right? But you're able to develop like what your own personality of your craft and your art.
That's a whole nother aspect that I wasn't even thinking about. And I just think about just a context for what I do is like, you know, if I'm learning about photography or learning about something, it's like nowadays, what do you do? It's like, oh, well, let me go look at all these different photographers and all the stuff that they're doing. And it's like, they're like, well, if you want to do, you know, a headshot, well, then you got to do this. Or if you want to do a landscape, you got to do like a landscape photographer, you got to do this, and this. And it's like, if you do all that stuff, your stuff will just end up looking like the other person. You won't have any actual natural ability of your own, or what makes you an artist, right? What makes you want to create in the first place, right? So I really appreciate that. Sometimes that whole creative process, you even see nowadays where musicians are like, we're just going to the mountains and they just have, you know, whatever shack somewhere that's doesn't have any connections. It just has their equipment and, you know, their recording studio, and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Very interesting.
And at the bars that she would go to, she became, and I don't know if this is just who she is as a person or trying to be, if she was just always this way, or if this was as a result of not wanting to be seen because you're being physically abused and you want to kind of not be noticed so that you don't get in that person's way. But she is such this incredible observer. And so when she was in these bars and everything, she would just kind of sit there because it's all adult stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so she sees some like very adult behaviors. And so she's observing all this stuff.
You don't have to keep it PG. You can say what that means.
I don't know. I'm just like giving a generalization there. And so what was I going to say?
She's observing.
Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff, like she kind of studied them almost and would use some of what she saw like later on in her songwriting, which I thought was really interesting. And related to this too, like I think she took a lot of solace in nature, and obviously living in Alaska, like she talks just about how beautiful it was. And so she takes a lot of solace in nature. How
beautiful it would have been if she was in a happy home, a happy environment.
But she goes out, and I think that's how she's able to kind of function. And like she looks to nature a lot in terms of like putting some of those lessons into her life about nature. And like one of the kind of things she came up with was strong wood grows slowly or something like that. Yeah. So it's like you need to be the kind of person that's going to be resilient, and that doesn't happen quickly. Like it happens over a long period of time. Yeah. Like, so she says, strongest things bend. The opposite of brittle was bending. Great survivors have the ability to yield, adapt, and give. So that's what she was trying to do. And so she's also like, I don't know where this comes from. I think it's incredible though. She's so introspective about like her own feelings, and she understood like what was happening, her dad hitting her, like it wasn't her fault. Like she fundamentally understood that, but obviously like there's still going to be issues there, but but she was really able to be introspective and then use all of like nature and being out in nature to kind of help her. She said when she was on Joe Rogan, she said she was 15 and she was watching the tide go in and out, and she was contemplating suicide. But she watched the tide go in and out for so long, and she realized in that moment, nothing's permanent. Everything's going to change, and this is going to go. And so that's what I have to remember, is nothing is permanent. And so that helped her kind of move on, and she kept that with her for years and years. So, so
that's, it's pretty impactful. Pretty strong.
Yeah. And so she does, like, her and her dad actually do have a really good relationship today, even though he, was abusive.
Interesting.
And she says, like, she understood she's not excusing it, but she understood he was trying to do the best he could. And in a way, like, he didn't want to abuse them. And so he abused, this sounds awful, but like he abused them like less than he was abused.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds really shitty, but it's in a way it's like,
yeah. Can we give maybe, or I could just ask and then we can move on from this,
Yeah.
but like when you say abuse, like what kind? Is it just like, you know, like, well, they misbehaved and they got like a little, like a slap?
no.
Or is it like, what, you know, was it like, well, I'm just drunk and I'm going to beat on somebody?
No,
Do you know what I mean?
It
Or
was like
was
they
it
would do little things and it would trigger him and he would hit them.
right?
and-
So it was like, they did they would have to do something wrong.
I think so.
Like,
It wasn't,
so it's like a disciplinary thing.
but it was
those
also, but I think there was, she really didn't go into detail. And I
Right.
think that's why, because she's
it's
moved
vague.
past it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But she does say he like was at times unpredictable too. She didn't know what was
Yeah.
going to set him off.
right.
So,
It's just tough because, I mean, you know, again, we haven't done his book, right? But you look at
Oh,
David
fuck.
Goggins, right? Talking about,
Yeah.
and they use, it's the same word, abuse. Okay. Like that's like, you know,
It wasn't Goggins style abuse.
you know,
but-
or even there's even stuff that's even worse than what he went through, right? It's like, you're like
Yeah.
almost killing people, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, versus like, okay, well, discipline, but way, you know, over the line, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
but anyways, but did it sound like he was her father, at least someone that she would actually want to be around when he was in a good place? Like it wasn't that
She
bad because they were singing together and whatever.
Well, she didn't
Don't really know.
She didn't really say,
Okay.
and I guess yeah, and so like, but like she does say, you know, she understood. Like now looking back, she understood he came from such an abusive home in a way. Like he almost like didn't even know how to not be abusive. Do you know what I mean? Like.
But you learn, is she abusive to her kids now?
Well, of course
you
not,
know,
right? Of course
Yeah.
not. So, and then,
yeah.
so
Anyways.
and like I said, like I'm not trying to make excuses.
You're just telling me the
I'm
story.
just telling
You're
you
not-
the story.
you're not,
But I think she's able to kind of retrospectively see he was, you know, trying maybe to do the best he could. And they both had gone through a lot of therapy. And at the same time, she says, like, at least he didn't abandon us like her
like
mom
her mom.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
and we talked about this quite a bit before too, and it's just about forgiveness as
Oh,
well
yeah.
too. And if you
Yeah.
can forgive somebody,
Yeah, exactly. And so she's obviously done like a lot of work, like to get through that whole whole issues. And one thing she says, I loved this. She has such a beautiful way with words. And she said, it's been about engaging in a loving and tender archaeological dig back to my true self. And I just loved that imagery that she came up with. Like, I just thought it was just really
it's almost like she's a songwriter.
Almost.
Which is, I mean, songwriting can even be seen as a type of poetry as well too, right? So,
Yeah. And so, what was I gonna say? She was actually diagnosed with dyslexia as well, which I thought was kind
and
of
that's what
interesting.
dyslexia is, where you can't read words
They
correctly.
I think it's because they look backwards or something. Like I think that's what they don't. Yeah.
So can't read, can't type kind of thing. Is that
No, I think you
can,
can, but
but-
it just takes a lot more concentration.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
But again, just because you can't read or write as effectively as you could, you can still understand the words and can still put words together just fine, right? So
Yeah.
if it's in the mind,
Yeah.
like you hear about those stories of, what the hell? What the hell's his name? Nelson Mandela, like writing these speeches, like in jail, you know, and Martin Luther King, I think, did that as well too. It's just like writing these speeches with nothing. Like it's unbelievable. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she does have a little bit of a relationship with her mom. She always tries.
I was going to ask, I don't know
Yeah.
whether I should ask any questions or not. If I'm
You
just,
can always
just
ask questions.
well, I don't know. Sometimes
No,
I don't want to get barked at. Well, because I have a few questions. Well,
Yeah.
my one question is like, because you were saying, oh, well, no, you shouldn't have a relationship with her mom. And I was like, oh, but the mom's maybe a little bit pissed off now because, you know, her daughters go out to be famous and rich or whatever,
We're gonna
right?
get there with her
okay.
mom.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
So, yeah. So her relationship with her mom, it's all Jewel making the effort. So obviously her mom lives so far away. So
Where did she move to?
so her mom stayed in Anchorage and they were the ones that moved to Homer, which is like 7 hours away, I want to say.
A drive or like a horse and buggy?
A drive. So she would always try to get rides up to see her mom, and she would. I think sometimes she would even like go like unannounced just because she wanted to be with her mom. Then there
At what
came-
age is she doing these
She's
traveling?
like 10.
At 10?
Yeah, like on her own. Like she's not old. Like it's ridiculous. So she's doing this every once in a while. It comes to a point where she stays with her mom for a little bit in one town. And it's just kind of like she just kind of comes and goes. Like there's nothing structured or anything
like the mom
like
comes
that.
and goes.
No, Jewel comes and goes, like living with her mom. So, but at this point, she's living with her mom for a little bit. One of her brothers is there too. Like it's just like
weird
chaos. Yeah. And so she said her mom was like an artist, and
why is that in quotes?
Well, because I just think it's a little bullshit. But anyways, so, and she said like her mom would do like a lot of work with glass. And then I guess there was this one kind of art installation she did, and it was with,
stop putting everything in quotes.
It was with ice.
Was it with
ice? It was with ice. And her mom said it was because it was impermanent that made it special. And so Jewel says, I felt the fleeting moments of our interactions were the same, special, ephemeral, and intense before she disappeared again. And so her mom would also kind of constantly say, oh, she had to rest because she had a heart condition, or she said something like, oh, I have some vague thing about her having cancer, so she had to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. But there was always these like weird like health issues that she didn't really go into detail with, but had to do different things.
Right.
So
you mean that her mom told Jewel why she? It sounds like they're just excuses, but I have no idea. I have no idea.
And so for the most part, like she was completely self-sufficient. Like she would, get herself to school and take jobs so she could do things, because like they were so poor, just like living on this homestead and all this stuff. So
well, I mean, the good news is that the water and the toilets, all that stuff is pretty free. You just go out there, get the wood, chop the wood for your heat. Well,
and then so there was, when she was 15, she basically moved out. She said to her mom, because she's back and forth between her mom and her dad, and she said to her mom, well, I can't live with him anymore. Like I can't live here anymore. And her mom was like, oh, well, why don't you just move out? I was like, what the fuck?
You mean with you? Come live
with no, she was like, oh, just like you rent a place.
Yeah.
It's like, what kind of mother is this?
Well, what kind? A kind that obviously wanted to leave her kids.
Yeah. So she rented this like little cabin on the homestead and just basically like works her ass off. So she works odd jobs in town. And then
you said she rented this cabin off the homestead?
On the homestead, yeah, from someone in her family. One of her aunts or something.
So they have lots of cabins that are just on there, I guess.
I don't know. So she worked her ass off. Went to school at the same time, and so she would do like little odd jobs, cleaning. She would take tourists on like rides with horses and stuff like that. And so eventually there's this arts class or this dance class that she wants to take, and turned out she was shitty at dancing. But the instructor heard her voice and was just like, oh wow, like you need, he's like, you need to apply to the school in Michigan that I teach at. It's a private school, and you need to apply for it because like your voice is amazing and it could be a really good school for you to learn how.
Right.
So so basically, so she sends in her application,
which is like a demo tape or whatever.
And she totally gets accepted.
Right.
She can't afford the tuition. She gets a part scholarship, and so the town basically kind of comes together. Like she puts on like a fundraising show, but the whole town,
that's nice.
The whole town comes together, and she's able to go.
Because I imagine it's small towns and everyone knows everybody too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, especially she's
singing, spread out.
And she's singing all around all these like different bars.
So they know that she's good too.
Yeah. And so it's a huge change for her, obviously.
Michigan, yeah, no kidding.
So she tells this funny story. The first day she shows up and she's like walking around and she has like a skinning knife, because it's like Alaska, you're just always walking around with a knife. Yeah. She gets called into like the principal's office and he's like, what the fuck? Basically. And she's like, oh, this isn't normal? Like,
what are you going to do?
How do you survive here?
How are you going to kill the chickens?
Yeah. But then there's a bunch of other things that happened too. Like she didn't realize she would need money. She'd have to buy textbooks, which is weird for like a high school, and that she would have to pay for her food. She just thought it was just like a boarding school. I thought I could just do this.
Yeah.
So they get her a couple little odd jobs around the school, and then she also goes out and she does get little gigs on the side when she's in Michigan.
It's that little hustle stuff that just will make you better than everyone, because you just you have the talent, but then the work ethic is what really propels you past everyone else.
Yeah. And so when she really started writing songs, so this whole time she's like, when she's with her dad, like right after her parents separate, she's always journaling just to kind of, I think, release that emotion and just to kind of get shit out.
Yeah.
And so it's her first spring break that she's at this school. And so you're not supposed to stay over during holidays at the school. So same with like Christmas break, she couldn't stay over. So she's like, oh my God.
That's far.
I know. But so
like
she doesn't,
real far.
so she doesn't go home. So she ends up, she's like, oh, I'm just going to hitchhike. I'm going to hitchhike down to Mexico.
Oh.
So she hitchhikes from Michigan to Mexico. But this is where she really starts to marry the journaling with like the music and bringing it together, and starts songwriting.
Yeah.
And so she actually wrote Who Will Save Your Soul, which is like her first huge single. She wrote that when she was 16, which is unreal because that song was amazing. And she said, it relieved the pressure and let me see my own inner workings plainly. Writing songs offered different tools like melody and tone to convey and release emotion, unlike journal writing. So I thought that was really interesting. Like because you can convey so much more within a song paired with the words. So so I thought that was really, really kind of cool. So then eventually the second year, it's like her last year at this school, she gets like a full scholarship. So then she finishes that. So
that pays for food too, and books and everything.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, and then
because you have to think this is America too, right? So everything's more expensive. I mean, they have private schools here too, but America publics or private schools, you have to pay for everything, and they're not cheap. No.
Then eventually she ends up in San Diego after she's finished high school. The one thing she doesn't talk about, which I would love to ask her this question, is she doesn't really talk about like what her plan was after high school. Like, I don't know if there was a plan to
like, I'm just going to be a musician.
Yeah, like there was, or like, go to college and like, continue to work on, because
was that Julianne Arts? There's like lots Juilliard. There's lots of music schools or all that kind of stuff.
Well,
too.
and that's what I wondered is like,
or maybe
why
she just wanted to be like a singer, like a
well, so that's what I wondered. Like, it was interesting because it wasn't just like vocal that she was kind of really good at school. She was doing like visual arts and performing arts and all of these different things within the school. So I don't know like what her plan was, what she wanted to pursue, and why she didn't go to like a post-secondary, and why. Yeah.
Well, you know me, why go to pay someone hundreds of $1,000s when you can just go,
of course,
just do it and learn.
Of course, but I guess like even
like work out there.
But even like there was no other plan, like
right. Maybe that's not the point of the story. I guess I don't know.
So then she ends up in San Diego, California, because that's where her mom is, and her mom needs someone to take care of her because she's not feeling well. So again, she's doing the same thing. She's like working odd jobs, she's doing like little gigs all the time. And then she's at this one job and she goes in to get her, it's like at a call center or something like that. And so she goes in to get her paycheck, and basically the guy was not going to give her paycheck unless she slept with him.
Wow.
So she's like, yeah, no. And so she's like completely distraught because her mom's not working. She's the only one bringing in money to pay the rent, and she's like, wanting, I think the thing with her mom, obviously she feels abandoned, and so she has this huge need for her mom's love, and her mom plays on this, and it's so disgusting. It's like you could almost
she's an abuser too.
You could I didn't even think about it that way.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of it.
But you could almost like call it like she's almost like grooming her in a way for like setting up like eventually Jewel's gonna take care of me. Like she understands the pull she has on her.
Yeah.
And even like at one point she says, well, we're twin flames, so like we're just one soul and two bodies, like we're so connected by this. And she tells Jewel like, well, and she says like this totally set up our relationship further on, like, oh, there's people in life who are dreamers and there's people in life who are doers, and well, I'm a dreamer and you're the doer. So it's really sets some shitty shit up there. So she can't pay her rent at this point, and she's like completely distraught about it. And so she tells her mom, like, I can't pay rent anymore. Like, I don't know, what are we gonna do? And her mom's like, oh, well, we just move into our cars.
Yeah, there's a good idea.
Yeah. So now she's homeless, living in her car.
Live in a van down by the river. Well, I mean, she couldn't go to the cops or anywhere to get your pay.
No, nothing like that.
The human resources. It must have just been like some shady call center too.
Yeah.
Still, it's not right.
It's not right. So then the thing,
to say the least.
And then the thing at this time was artists were doing like a lot of coffee shop gigs. And so what was happening, and then a lot of them were getting signed. Like there was like this huge like swarm of people getting signed because they've been playing at these coffee shops. So these owners were just like, oh, well, almost like you have to pay me to play in my coffee shop rather than the other way around. And so they would charge like an entry fee to get into the coffee shop. And so Jewel was like, well, we should get that entry fee, or we should get a part of it or something, right? Because we're bringing the people in. Yeah. But no one was willing to do that. So she did find another coffee shop owner. She was just kind of chatting with her, and she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to have to close in like a couple weeks. Like no one's coming and I'm losing money.
How about I sing for you?
Yeah. And so she makes a deal with her and said, like, they make like a deal or whatever. And so she starts singing. It starts so freaking slowly. Yeah. But then just like builds up like over time.
Well, how much time are we talking about?
Not long. Like I think
over time. How much long? Not long.
She started working there, and then I think she ended up getting signed like a year later. So,
but like drawing more and more people to this. Yeah. So how long was she homeless, living in her car for?
About a year.
Until she was signed.
Yeah, something like that.
Does she talk about that experience at all?
She does. She talks a lot about it. I'm not going to get into it. And so she talks a lot about it in the book. She talks a lot about it on Rogan. And I won't talk about it because it's really in depth, like how she got herself out of it. She would have panic attacks. She had agoraphobia. She had so many
agoraphobia?
So like not wanting to leave your home or wherever you are. Being afraid to go outside, basically.
Like even in her car? Yeah. So she'd want to stay in her car?
Yeah. Not only that, she was getting like constant kidney infections to the point where she almost died.
How do you get a kidney infection?
I don't know.
Is that the environment or?
I don't know.
Because I imagine too, if you're living in your car, you're probably not, you're going out lots of times, or you're just staying in, I don't know, libraries and working or whatever. You're out and about, not just sitting in your car, right? But like you just go there to sleep or whatever. Yeah.
So she talks a lot about like how she got herself through it. And again, it's like, she's so introspective. She wrote everything down and really like worked her mind through it. And even when she was on Rogan talking about, she has a bunch of mental health programs like for kids in a school. She has like a special school. She does a whole bunch of mental health issues with these kids. She's trying to move it into like a corporate setting as well to help people with mental health issues. She's so insightful on this, and it's just it's absolutely incredible. And how she got herself out of it, it's worth reading the book if you have any anxiety issues, anything. It's so amazing. And same with the Joe Rogan, she explains it really well, like how she got herself out. Yeah. So
how old was she when she signed then?
I think she was 19.
So I was 19. So she finished
1920.
So she finished her high school, 17, 18 years old, and then worked for, so it happened pretty fast. Yeah. But apparently she looks like she was singing all her life too.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. And so
she has like amazing talent. Yeah.
Well, she does. And then like the crowds got so huge at the coffee shop, like people were like standing outside watching her. And so then the industry people started coming, and there was actually like a bidding war over her.
Which record was going to sign her or whatever. Yeah. I think I remember seeing like a YouTube video, and it was like a karaoke, and people were singing like a Jewel song. And then she was dressed up, or like that song, and she was dressed up as like not her, because she was wearing whatever. And people are like, wow, that's really good. Sounds like you actually sound like Jewel. And then people are like, that is Jewel. Or whatever. I remember seeing that video. I'll see if I can find it and link to it. But anyways.
But I think what she also talks about is she'd do like 5-hour sets.
Sorry, what's her name?
Jewel.
It is Jewel. Yeah, it is. Interesting. What's the last name?
Kircher.
Jewel Kircher. Okay.
Yeah. So she.
I'm sorry, I thought that was just like her.
No, that's what I kind of
whatever stage name or
that
whatever,
was actually I think
like Prince.
So I think her grandfather's middle name was actually Jewel. I think that's what I read. So yeah, it was interesting. But she would do these like 5-hour shows, and it was just her singing, and she's like pouring her heart out. And so it's again what we've seen with all like everybody. It's especially last week with Classified, it's about being authentic and being vulnerable.
Right.
And so this is also one of the reasons why Brene Brown blurbed her book, like wrote a little thing on her book.
Oh, right.
Because Brene Brown.
Yeah, who is she?
So she's a social scientist that I've read a couple of her books. She's incredible. She does a lot of research about shame and vulnerability. We've talked about her before.
Okay.
But vulnerability. And so she realized that like, she says, talking about my shame and fear actually caused others to accept me. True safety was not in having armor. It was in vulnerability, because that's how you can connect with people.
Yep.
So I just, I loved that. So she has all this signing bonus or all this like stuff coming at her. And so she goes to the library, and I loved this because it like reminded me of me. She goes to the library and reads a book about the music industry. And like what to do.
Well, I'm in here now. What's going on?
Yeah, so
music industry for dummies.
This is before she signs, and so
before she signs.
Signs. And then
go educate yourself.
And then along this time too, like she's doing so much work, because how she starts the book is she said, "What I had going for me was that at a fairly young age, I figured out what I wanted." Happiness. And so she had always been she had been working through so much, just like work on herself just to be happy. And she also talks a lot about is it nature versus nurture, and if you don't know anything else in terms of like your childhood, like how can you move forward, right? So she's always trying to answer that question within herself as well. And so she was doing so much work. So she had almost like achieved like that happiness piece. Like she felt happy and she felt joy. So when she's thinking about signing with this record company, number one, she has that as her number one is like her happiness and also her art. She doesn't want her
like
art.
What she's looking for signing.
And so she also doesn't want her art to be compromised at the same time. Exactly. And so
that's rare too for someone who's that young and who's never actually signed anything. And that as your first contract, get all that control.
This one is gonna blow your mind because they offered her $1 million signing bonus.
That's just the signing bonus,
But and it was the biggest I think it was one of the biggest at that time. And she, after she was like reading that book, she realized, well, that signing bonus it's just like a loan. And so if you don't sell all of your records, you have to pay back that money. Like it's not actual money.
That's why you got to get a lawyer. But she obviously, that's the thing. Well, it depends. So it depends on the industry, right? I know sports, the athletes, they have a signing bonus. They just get it.
No, this isn't.
But this is different with music. So it's not called, it shouldn't be called a signing bonus. It should be called a signing advance.
Exactly. And so she ended up negotiating the biggest back end deal at the time. And so I guess she would make more money than
the other people.
Yeah, but once she sold records.
Because you don't want it at the front. Because then you believe in yourself, and that's the thing.
You're betting on yourself.
Exactly. Because a lot of people, signing bonus, I'll get this huge money or whatever. But then if you are really successful, that's when the record companies, think of like, what, $20 a CD back in the day? Like how much would the artist get after that?
Pennies.
Like, well, I think it'd be a little more than pennies, but not very much, right? Because the record company's got to get that, like, even the production, it's so much that they don't get a lot at all. So you negotiate on your behalf and say like, okay, well, no, if we're going to sign, I'm going to get this much, then give me 50% of the profits or whatever. Yeah.
And so to do her first album, she actually used, because it's like she's in a weird, like she's kind of like, I guess, like a folk artist kind of deal is what you would call her at that time in the genre. So she got the producer of Neil Young's Harvest album. So he did that one. And so she actually recorded a couple songs like at his ranch. She went to go to his ranch.
At Neil Young's ranch. That's
pretty cool.
So when she had a producer, were they did they have actually any actual musicians that were making the music as well too that were playing?
Yeah.
So they
they
just found.
Yeah, someone. I think like a lot of them were people that had played with Neil Young as well.
Right.
I think she said so.
And so when she's making her songs, is she just like, this is one thing that I know this is probably into the weeds, so you can probably just say I don't understand, I don't know, so we'll just move on. But like, when does she's writing songs, but she knows what she wants the other instruments to be like, or is it just like, oh well, here's kind of the melody and here's how it goes, and then what do you guys think, and let's just work it out and let's figure out what makes sense?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. This would be the answer. I would assume probably that would be how it would have gone.
I mean, I know for me, when I was playing, it was like, it's like, you know, I know my part or whatever, and you just kind of work it out and you're just like, oh, that sounds really good, and you just kind of play. And then I know some people, they'll just like, okay, let's just do things, and then we'll just have different cuts, and every time we record it's like even different. And I remember Phil Collins was talking, you know, that song In the Air, when it's like
of course.
And he's like, I was just drumming, and it's like, I just did it that take, and that just happened to stick, right? If I did another take, it would have been different, right?
That.
So
I love that.
Yeah, and I think that album too, he was writing it, and he had just gotten divorced, I think. So
that's interesting.
I think the ex-wife didn't like it. It's like, it's too bad.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I don't know the lyrics to that, but Phil Collins
either.
is pretty awesome too. I love Phil Collins, anyways.
Yeah. So now she's done she's done the record. So now
the first record,
you gotta promote it, and so you have to think about the time that her first record came out, because this was like at the height of grunge. So no one wants to listen to a female folk singer.
So what year?
So what her first album, Pieces of You, I think it came out in the 90s. I can't see the exact date. It was like late. It was like 96. I want to say like 95, 96.
But I think then Lisa Loeb might have
95.
Did Lisa Loeb pave a little bit of a way for her in that niche too? Because there was that song that she had that was super popular.
Yeah.
I can't. Do you know what that song is?
I'm looking it up right now.
Totally can't remember.
It's so good. It's so.
I
good.
even love that song. I'm like, this
Stay?
is great.
Was it Stay?
Yeah, that's
Stay.
it. How does it go?
So Stay. I can't remember.
But
it was from Reality Bites. I didn't know
Lisa
that.
Loeb.
Yeah, that song was from Reality Bites.
No, it was huge.
Yeah,
it was totally huge.
Yeah, because Reality Bites was like such a huge movie.
Yeah.
Back, I remember, like, I was so huge.
You know what? I've never even seen it.
You have to see it.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, 94 was when Stay. So yeah, so definitely and I think there was like another artist actually, because she talks a little bit about like, there was like a Lisa Loeb out there. There was somebody else out there at the same time.
Oh, Shania Twain. Different genre.
Yeah, but still,
I guess. But it's still that female, not the non-grunge. But I don't know, the 90s though. I thought the 90s was really great, because I thought there was a big diversity of stuff too, right? Because if you like the Green Day, you could listen to that. You know, AC/DC was still rocking, and then you still had the Megadeth was out there, right? Yeah. So you had all kinds of, you know, the Tea Party, and just the your rock was going out there, and then there was the alternative stuff too, and then I remember like Lisa Loeb and other stuff.
Yeah,
Bare Naked Ladies, Sheryl Crow, Bare Naked Ladies. You know, all these other bands.
We're like so old to be like
5440 or whatever.
Music's not like it was.
Not like it used to. Now the noise. Well, now I mean.
Don't even get me started.
What's that, like that trap stuff or whatever?
I don't know.
That's just like, it just sounds like this awful noise of stuff. And it's like grinding. It's all electronic, and it's just.
My issue with music today
is like down.
The lyrics back when we were growing up, like I just remember like Smashing Pumpkins and No Doubt and Bush, like their lyrics like meant something to my tortured teenage heart. Like I don't know, I just really identified. And even Jewel wrote a book of poetry, and I think I got that for like when I was 17 for Christmas, and that book was like everything. It was incredible, and it was just that's how her lyrics are just so beautiful and insightful.
Do you remember?
And now it's just like, oh, baby, let's go fuck. I don't know.
Wow.
Well,
and she's just like, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that kind of cheap radio pop, and John LaJoie does a nice parody of it. But it's funny. Do you remember the movie Airheads?
Yeah, of course.
And so the guy's interviewing the guy he's the Brendan Fraser character, and he wants to be a rock and roll guy. And the guy's like, oh, rock and roll now. And this is a 90s movie too. He's like, rock and roll today doesn't have a whole lot to say, right? Because he's like, back in my generation when you had the Led Zeppelin and whatever and Jimi Hendrix. And then the guy's like, oh yeah, well, are you going to tell me that Purple Haze means something? And you look at that lyrics, right? It's just like getting high. So it's like,
well, that's true.
It's like every generation I think is like a thing. But yeah, but I also think it depends on the actual song and the genre. But yeah, like the pop stuff you hear. The Justin Bieber and I don't even know what, but it's like, what do these songs even mean? And it's just some weird things thrown together. And it's not very deep and emotional. And you just kind of listen to it for the beat. Yeah. And that's like, oh, well, whatever. It's got a good beat. So you could dance to it or whatever. And, it sells records, I guess. So,
yeah. So,
but again, it's like our kids now and 30 years, they're going to be like, oh, this music you kids are listening to is not like when I was listening to, which, and they hate the stuff that we listen to. And it's kind of how the cycle goes. Yeah. But still, yes, music today is crap.
So she's continuing. So the only way she can do is just like to constantly like tour and like just play wherever she can. So she's just constantly working, constantly playing.
And is it her record label are finding all the venues for her to play, or do they organize?
I think so.
Is she opening up for doing opening acts for bigger bands?
For a lot of, but it's like weird, right? Because like grunge bands that she's opening for.
Scratching Post.
Yeah, Scratching.
You remember?
Yes, I remember. So
still kind of embarrassing, but whatever.
So
we'll tell that story some of the time. Remind us to tell us the Scratching Post story.
So she's working her ass off, but that's how like she thinks she was kept on, because her record wasn't doing well at all at this point, and so that's the only reason she thinks she was able. They kept her on was because she was so cheap. Like she didn't have a tour bus. She was just like taking her own car, driving around to her gigs.
So they weren't costing her very much money.
She was like,
or she wasn't costing them very much money. Because of the way she structured the deal. It's like once I start selling, then I'm going to get paid.
I'll get paid. Exactly. Yeah.
So. And I guess they won't like it, but at least they'll be making two, even if it's like a crazy 50-50 split, which is like unheard of. But
yeah. So she talks a little bit about how her mom's reaction when people were just like, oh, Jules' performance was so amazing, and she's like, it was her reaction, like looking back, was like really off, and it was almost like she gave the impression that she was responsible for Jules' performance and didn't let Jewel have like all of the.
There's a lot of jealousy there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, she said, my lack of confidence, my fear, and my need to be loved created a perfect breeding ground for doubt and dependence. Because this is just now her mom's just kind of around. It's
weird though. I'm getting mixed vibes in that. Oh, she's out in nature and she's journaling and she's doing all these things and she's independent.
I know.
But yet, so I'm feeling like, well, she's just a strong woman. She knows what she wants. She's going out there. She's getting signed. She's working
hard. Yeah.
But then you're telling me it's like, oh, well, she's like so emotionally manipulative and dependent on her mom, who's seems like a complete piece of shit. Yeah. And yet she's completely anchored to that person. So I'm getting two different vibes, but you're young still at the time.
But I think you have this like deep yearning for a mother's love and acceptance, and when you've been completely abandoned and you're the one that's constantly going to her to try and get some love and affection.
But at what point do you say that enough's enough?
Well, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
So eventually she like goes viral for back in the 90s, going viral,
right?
And it just goes like bananas.
Well, that's like having your song getting played on Much Music or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And she gets to open for Bob Dylan, which was like one of her huge heroes.
And it's Bob Dylan. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even a big fan
of
Bob Dylan.
You have to admit, like, he's huge.
It's like Elvis. It's like I don't care for his music, but you recognize that he's a pioneer in in his era. Yep.
Yeah. So she's constantly working, like once things take off, she's touring like constantly all the time. She's not living a lavish lifestyle. Like she's pretty down to earth. She's not spending money because that's just not important.
She's getting money for these touring deals as well too, I would imagine too, right? So she's getting good good ticket money or whatever the hell it is.
And then just like all of the records that she's selling, it's just the money's just like.
But this is just still just the first record that's
well,
picked up.
It's
but
like
these
other
multiple
ones too. Yeah, multiple ones. And so there is like this big thing. Her mom kind of keeps like coming in and trying to help and like ingratiate herself and be like, well, you don't want like this person, like why is this manager, why do we have her, why is she helping you, why don't you have
so
family?
She wants to like be like a manager.
So eventually she like fires that manager and then
hires their mom. That's gonna be a big mistake.
And so it's weird, there's some like weird kind of cultish stuff. They have this, her mom was like really into this like healing center type thing, and so there's these weird people that kind of get involved, and it's almost like a cult, and they're like brainwashing her.
Boom, boom.
Yeah. And so her mom has like a staff. Her mom has a fucking staff. She has like, I don't know how many.
Like a staff of people or like a staff
no,
that you
like
walk
a staff
with?
of people that are like helping run Jewel's business. But that's not what's really happening. She hears her mom saying that she's investing in like this screenplay of this movie and they're trying to get this movie produced, which never happens. And it's just this like weird stuff that's happening. So with her mom's just taking on and she's not even looking at her books. She's just assuming everything is just fine and being taken care of because she's not a materialistic person. All she wants is a house because she just doesn't want to be homeless anymore.
Hold up. Okay, so she's letting her mom be in charge of her money.
Everything. Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're a materialistic person or not. Someone's going to steal your money.
So
this happens so often with parents stealing money from their children that are successful.
It's disgusting.
Whether it's like athletes or athletes, musicians, what just things you can make a lot of money, and there's not too many of those professions. But those things, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And you hear like they have to go bankrupt because their parents stole all their money.
So what's unreal is
that's all I was going to say. Like, why is Jewel even paying her? Oh, not only is she paying her, she's giving her all her money. And this is, I'm sure, millions of dollars.
So while this is happening, she's like, I have so much money. Like, it just makes me I know
mad.
She's like, I can take all of these like artistic risks, which she does. So she puts out a pop album. She does like a bunch of these risks. Jewel, yeah. And so
because I have money.
And so she's like, I don't have to worry about it. Like, if people don't like it, that's fine because I don't have to work anymore. If I don't want to, I don't have to work anymore.
Yeah, I think you do because she doesn't have any money.
So eventually, she starts dating this. He's a cowboy, like an actual cowboy rodeo guy. And they have really similar values. She's ridden horses all her life, so she gets it. And he's like this like high achieving. He's broke like a ton of like rodeo records apparently. Mm-hmm. And so his name is Ty Murray, just in case anybody is a pro rodeo cowboy. So but the mom doesn't like this guy because he's like, you need, like, what's going on with this? Doesn't sound right. Like, you need to talk to your mom about this. Like, this money thing is kind of weird. And so the mom obviously,
of course,
doesn't
can't
like
get in
that.
between me and my money.
Exactly. So then what happens is the manager that they fired takes them to court and sues them because she's like, well, you've made all of this money. I was supposed to get 10% and now you fired me for like no reason. Like, I'm going to take you to court. So this court case was going on, and the judge finally brought both Jewel and the manager in and said, like, just settle this. Like, just fucking settle this and be done. And so they agree on an amount. And Jewel goes and tells her mom how much it is. And her mom's just like, well, we don't have that much money. And Jewel's like, what? We don't have this? So she slowly is like unraveling this fucking shit show. And so she brings on obviously a bunch of like accountants and other people, managers, new people kind of come in, and she starts unraveling. She's like,
hire the other manager back and be like, well, sorry.
Yeah. They think her mom, their estimate is that she took $100 million.
That much?
Yes.
See, I was thinking maybe like 10 to 15 million. I knew Jewel was popular, but
that much.
So she swindled $100 million.
Yeah,
and to what?
They even told her she had gone bankrupt or she had gone broke 2 times in her career before she found out what was happening.
How did she not even know that
her mom hid all of it from her?
It was that
like blind trust in her.
why would you blind trust somebody that has done literally nothing for you except
Don't know.
push you through her vagina? Like, that's it.
That's all you've done. Yeah, I don't know. It's so messed up.
It's so and it's so infuriating. This is why I always tell you how important it is to just learn the basics about finances and just teaching your kids about that, because
yeah.
But how does she not even know? Like, what was she doing with the money? Like, what do you do with $100 million?
She doesn't even know. She has no idea. It's just gone.
Like drugs and hookers, I hope, at least.
Like not even. Not even. Yeah.
What does it smell like, Charlie?
Yeah.
Hookers. More hookers.
Yeah.
Nothing to Lose, if you haven't seen that. That's a fantastic movie.
It's a fantastic movie.
But yeah, like 100. How do you?
I know.
Like, how's it gone? Like, what are you doing?
I don't know. So she gets married. She eventually gets married to this Thai.
I guess he's not marrying her for her money.
The thing is, though, is like she
she
figures it out. But
well.
she figures it out, and she goes and she does like a country album, and she works that out. Like, I just love
without
that
her mom, right?
Of course, yeah. But she's like taking like all of these like amazing kind of like risks, and like really it's for her, it's all about her
it's
art.
just about I was just gonna say it's all about the art and creation, and like and creating, not creation, but creating music and creating things that people enjoy, or things that even that represent you. Because it's funny, because as you grow as a person, your tastes will grow and evolve as well too. So it's kind of interesting that your music would. Yeah. Because a lot of people, it's like, well, I'm a rock and roll guy, so I just have to make rock and roll all the time. But that's, I mean, maybe you still will like that. That's fine too,
yeah,
right?
but
like
I love
AC/DC's
that she's
been playing the same hard rock for 50 years or whatever. Like, it's awesome, right? But it's also awesome too if you can, like, you know what, I want to expand and I want to tell different stories because they're more from the heart, I guess you can say, right? As opposed to like, I'm just creating rock and roll because it's, you know, I love it, right? So it's just a little bit of a difference, I guess, but that's, I don't know, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she did that. Her and Ty eventually have a son, but then after like about 6 years of being married, they get divorced. So then she has to go through all that too. So I think, like,
do you know why? Is it?
She didn't really say too much, and like she's like, we figured out like we have to have the best relationship possible for their son, which I love when that happens, when people decide they're not better together and they just need to have a good relationship. So
they should fall apart, they should separate, obviously, if you can't live together under the same roof. But it's also just reading about it too, so you don't really know how bad it could possibly be. But you know, if it sounds good and they're saying it's good, then good. I guess good for the kids.
And she talks a lot about like her recovery after, you know, the devastation of her mom, like
losing $100 million.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but like just the betrayal.
No, yeah. Well, but she was betrayed. Like, I would imagine the betrayal of not having your mother being in your life is maybe even more so than even losing $100 million, because
of course that is the bigger betrayal of how could you possibly do this to your kid. And so obviously she's so
it's weird though, because what I don't understand is that the mom left and I don't want to be a parent anymore, but yet still took the kid around, and still, maybe because she realized that I could one day mooch off this kid. I don't know.
Yeah, it was.
You know what I mean? If you want to get away, then you get away.
Yeah, but she didn't, so it was just kind of like, you take them, like.
Yeah, it was almost like, well, I just don't. It's like, I just don't want the responsibility. I don't want the
responsibility. Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
just a con artist.
Yeah, but it's like, and she talks a lot about like she's read like books about like narcissistic personality disorders and like all of these things, and so she's able to more. And again, I love it because that's how I am too. You want to understand like, what the fuck just happened to me, and why would this person possibly do this? And so it's just like all the research that she's done, and it was just really, really awesome. So yeah, and so I think she has like she's done like a bunch of kind of collabs. Like she did a collab with like Dolly Parton, and she has like there's
another great artist. So there's another great artist too.
Yeah, and so she had like another album out right now that she has out.
She's still going strong, eh?
Yeah. So yeah, I just think the resilience and being able to, like, after she's been through so much shit, and it's just like you get kicked and you get kicked and you get kicked, but you're able to get back up, and you're able to not be like, she doesn't sound bitter.
Almost like you're never broken.
Almost like you're never broken.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's able just to get back up each time and not be bitter, I think is really important, and be
That's
able
hard.
to like, slowly trust people again. So yeah, that's why I really loved it. And just, it's a good story. You go from being fucking homeless to like
whatever,
huge
star, and then going bankrupt a couple times without even knowing it. I guess that's the best way to go bankrupt, is if you don't even know
about it.
that you're bankrupt. It's like whenever I play Monopoly, I know when I'm bankrupt, and the board goes a flying, but to not even know. But because that's the thing too, she's still making in money every time she releases a record album, right? So the money's still going in.
So
but that's crazy.
It's a crazy story.
That's crazy. That's a good story.
Her podcast with Rogan is really, really good.
You should listen to it.
Yeah.
Put it on that 2x speed, and then
you know it.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. Cool. Right on. All right. 1 to 10 in terms of a book. Just on the merits of a book.
I'd give it a 9. She's a beautiful writer.
You would imagine. It's funny though, because she's like an artist or whatever. You give her a 9, but you give other books 10s.
That's
not
true.
This one.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they're writers too. They're writers, but she's not a writer per se. She's more of
I'm at a 9.
A poet, which is still a writer. You know what I'm saying. She's
a beautiful writer. How she writes about things was just really, 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 really well done.
Well, 9 out of 10 is still a pretty damn good score.
Yeah, and just like how introspective she was, I definitely really suggest reading the book, because she's so introspective, and it's very interesting to hear. And the podcast on Rogan, she talks a lot about how she kind of got over things, and it was just unreal.
Yeah, and there's not much we can say in terms of going on any adventure if she's done anything like that, but I think you hit the nail on the head too, is that I think for us, everyone else who's listening to, like everybody, we could do a lot better in terms of looking within ourselves and finding out all those things that are bothering us or that are in our way for our happiness. And a lot of that could be guilt, or could also be
shame,
things that other people have done to us as well too, through no fault of our own, right? Like you could have been abused or damaged or whatever, all that kind of stuff. But learning how to let go and being able to forgive and move on, I think that's a very hard lesson, and something you have to continue to work on. Yeah,
and I think like in terms of being an artist, no matter what your art is, I think it's beautiful that she's always evolving. She's not static. It's always learning, always improving her craft. That's one thing I really loved about her story as well. Yeah, it was really good.
No, that is really cool.
Yeah.
So Jewel. You're the jewel of my eye.
Oh, that's nice.
Is that something?
That's something.
Do you wanna do this one?
Sure do.
We can do that.
Oh, that was crisp.
That was crisp, and it was a high five.
It's a high five. I love it.
Right.
Awesome.
No, fantastic. Great story. Thanks for reading. Thanks for sharing it with me.
Were you surprised? Just before we sign up, were you surprised?
Yeah, that's a good point. I had no idea, because I knew she was big, but I also don't know no concept of how big she was, because she's not my genre. That's not what I'm listening to. Like if it'll come again back in the 90s, if that big popular song would come on the radio, I was like, okay, this person can sing or whatever. Yeah. But I don't know anything of her music at all.
Yeah.
That's something where like you're really successful. Like everyone knows your name.
Yep.
But she also has a really easy to remember name. But everyone knows who you are, but might not necessarily
listen to your music.
Yeah, and know just how big you are. But that's, I guess, you know what I mean? You're so big that everyone knows you, even if they don't know you, which is crazy. Yeah. Like everyone knows Prince. Yeah. Maybe not so much now, but it's like even if you don't know his music, like who? Prince? What is it? Yeah. And then they're like, oh, he did that. Oh, wow. You know, it's
I think
but that lifestyle, it's crazy surprising. It reminds me a little bit of, it's weird, like Mike Tyson, in the sense of surrounding himself with bad people who are there to just take from him and take his money or whatever. Then again, I would be a lot more hesitant to steal from Mike Tyson than I would steal from Jewel. But you know what I mean? And there's other stories like that. You hear of people working to the top and having other people, like I said, just take their money and take advantage of them too. Well, you always have to be careful, especially if you get rich. All these classified even talked about it.
People come out of the woodwork.
Luke. All these people that come up, it's like, oh, I want to be your friend now. Or whatever. It's like, okay, what's the angle here?
Pump the brakes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what's
very
interesting,
surprising.
I didn't know that. I knew like she was homeless, but I
Uh,
didn't. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything else about her story. I had no idea about her mom. I had no idea about her dad.
Where'd you even know that she was homeless from? It's one of those things on
because it's just part of like her
like Much Music.
story,
Hey,
right? Homeless. She goes from homeless
started
to
from
like
started from the top.
Started from the bottom. Now we here. Yeah.
You gotta. I don't know why I always had the Jean Lajoie in my head. Maybe we're talking about music all the time, but you know his song started as a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
All you people talking about, what did you say? Talking about starting from the bottom. Ha! I started when I was a baby. I couldn't even talk, motherfucker. Now look at me, walking on my own two legs. You know, he's just all whatever.
Yeah, he's literally the best. He's the best.
Anyways, this is devolving outside of.
It is indeed, and I'm starving.
What? You're starving?
Yes.
Starving Marvin.
Starving for pizza.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah. Which I'm gonna have to make for you, I guess. I can do that for you. Awesome sauce.
All right.
Thank you for
listening.
watching, listening, whatever it is you're doing.
Have a good couple weeks.
That's right. Yeah.
Off.
So we'll see you
soon.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
And we'll give Andrea some time to read some more books here to get caught up. Because one a week is a lot.
It's a lot.
Obviously with motherly duties and like we said with summer.
Yeah,
visiting with family, which is nice because
it's been awesome, but I can't get as much reading
lockdown for forever.
And I have so many good ones on deck, so I'm really excited. It's gonna be good when we come back. So it's gonna be good.
Yep, perfect. Well, looking forward to it.
Sweet. All right.
Until then, enjoy the rest of your summer.
Bye.